A member of our Evolutionary Leaders Circle is Ocean Robbins, who he began his career as a youth activist at about 16 and created YES as an organization to empower young people. But now he has allowed the leadership of YES to pass on to younger people. And he has joined his father, John Robbins, in launching what they call the food revolution. So let's welcome Ocean Robbins.
Thank you so much. I loved what Jean just did because part of what it illustrated was that we're longing for an opportunity to make a difference. And that when we really feel that what we do matters, and when we can really feel that it's going to touch somebody's lives, so many of us would jump at the chance to be a contribution to the world around us. And there's a lie in our times that we're isolated consumers who are just looking out for ourselves. But the truth is that I think we are hungry for a sense of contribution and a sense of hope for the world around us. My name's Ocean Robbins, and I want to start off my presentation with a bit of my family story. My grandfather founded Baskin-Robbins Ice Cream Company, 31 flavors. My dad grew up with an ice cream cone-shaped swimming pool in the backyard, and 31 flavors of ice cream in the freezer. And he was groomed from his early childhood to one day join in running the family company. But when he was in his early 20s, he was offered that chance, and he said no. And he walked away from huge amounts of fame and fortune and a path that was practically paved with ice cream and gold. And he ended up, he did that because he was aware that we lived then, as we do now, in a context where the environment was deteriorating rapidly under the impact of human activities, where rates of heart disease and diabetes and cancer were widespread, and much of that was unnecessary, and where children were going hungry. And what he said to his dad was, he said, given those circumstances, I don't think inventing a 30-second flavor would be an adequate response for my life. My grandfather was not pleased, but my dad had to follow his own rocky road. So he moved with my mom to a little island off the coast of Canada, where they built a one-room log cabin, grew most of their own food, and lived very, very simply. I was born there to parents who were doing yoga and meditating for hours every day and calling their kid Ocean. I grew up monetarily poor, but I felt rich. I had delicious, healthy, real food to eat, and I had a lot of love in my family. I didn't eat ice cream, but I didn't feel deprived. Then when I got a little older, we moved to California, and my dad became a best-selling author with the publication of Diet for a New America, which came out in 1987. And it inspired millions of people to look at their food choices as a chance to make a difference in the world. The media had a lot of fun with this story. They called him the rebel without a cone. They also called him the prophet of non-profit, and a few other things. I was inspired by my dad's example, by his integrity, by his choice to live by his values, and also by the impact he was having. We received over 60,000 letters from enthusiastic readers thanking him for touching their lives. So I wanted to reach out to my generation. I started a national tour, a nonprofit organization, and a national tour speaking to schools about the environment and about food choices. And we reached about 650,000 students in schools across the U.S. Then we started organizing transformational gatherings with young leaders, and we worked with leaders in over 65 countries. Then a couple of years ago, I decided to join forces directly with my dad. And so we launched the Food Revolution Network. And our first project was to bring together the voices of leaders in the food revolution. Now that's a big word, so let me just say what I mean when I talk about the food revolution. This isn't a revolution we fight with swords and bombs. It's a revolution we fight with our knives and forks. And this revolution is because in a context where mass-produced, chemical and pesticide-contaminated, hormone and antibiotic-laden foods that are fake, food-like products in many cases, that are often genetically engineered, that are produced without respect for the earth or for the farm workers or for the animals, to challenge that system And to eat real food that is healthy for our bodies and healthy for our ecosystems is a revolutionary act. But this revolution has collateral damage like any revolution, but in this case, the collateral damage is a healthier body and a healthier planet. And so I think it's time, when we look at the crisis that we're in today, we need to be serious about where we can really make the biggest impact. What can we really do if we don't just want to wear a Save the Whales button, but we actually want to save the whales? What can we do if we really want to stem climate change, if we really want to be healthy, if we really want to have an economic system that works and is viable for future generations? We need to examine every aspect of our lives. And one of those places where we have huge influence is our food choices. So here's the deal. We're paying a terrible price for the current system. We're paying it with our health, we're paying it with our ecosystems, we're paying it with our economics. 3/4 of the healthcare spending in the United States today is chronic diseases. This isn't something where you take a pill and you get better. This is stuff people just live with, often for the rest of their lives. 2/3 of that could be prevented with a change in diet. Now, the implication of this is enormous. Every 25 seconds, somebody in this country dies of heart attack or a disease caused by their arteries clogging up. Rates of diabetes are so high that 1 in 3 kids is expected to get diabetes in their lifetime. We're watching an epidemic of obesity, cancer rates rising. All over the world, more and more people are living sick. Healthcare spending should really be called disease care spending. It's not about helping people be healthy. It's about treating the symptoms of chronic illness. It now is responsible for 19% of GDP in the United States. That's more than 4 times the military budget. And it's going up fast. Medicare spending is expected to triple in the next 25 years in the United States. Who's going to pay for all that? We cannot afford to continue on this course. Fortunately, we don't have to. Science is very clear that we can prevent and reverse tremendous amount of the illness that is plaguing our kids, plaguing our elders, plaguing our populations today. Dr. Mark Hyman did a little experiment with the population of Saddleback Church in Southern California, working with a plant-strong diet and strong social networks to help people sustain positive changes. The congregation of Saddleback Church in 1 year lost 250,000 pounds, and their diabetes rates dropped dramatically. Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn studied the Tarahumara Indians of Mexico, where heart disease does not exist. They eat a plant-strong diet, they get a lot of exercise. He says you'd make more money selling pencils than being a heart surgeon in their communities. So he's done studies here in this country using diets very similar to the Tarahumara and found not only the ability to prevent heart disease, but the ability to reverse it with people that were considered inoperable. But 20 years later, everyone in his study is still living. He became President Bill Clinton's doctor and advisor, and the president lost 25 pounds and feels like he's got a new lease on life after being considered, on the fast track himself to more and more heart problems and having had his quintuple bypass surgery. So we're seeing that this stuff works. We're seeing that there's incredible potential for us to learn from the experts, learn from literally thousands of scientific studies that show us in no uncertain terms, we know what it takes to reverse many of the chronic diseases that are plaguing our people today. Eating more fruits and vegetables. Forgive me if this sounds like a basic lecture, but the principles are really simple. Eating more fruits and vegetables, eating a more plant-strong diet, eating more real food, eating less sugars, eating less processed foods, less chemicals, less junk, more real stuff. More food that comes out of the earth and less food that comes out of a package. It's pretty simple, but the results are profound. Now, one of the realities that we're also facing is that we're in a global context. And what we do sends out vast ripples. And you don't need me to tell you more about the dangers of climate change, which are real and immense. Turns out the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations did a report 7 years ago on climate change and agriculture. And their conclusion, very simply, was that the agricultural sector causes more carbon dioxide impact than the transportation sector. They actually, specifically, what they concluded was that livestock production causes more carbon impact than the entire transportation sector. So they said basically cows cause more climate impact than cars. And so if you really are serious about climate change, this is a place we can focus. We need more local foods. We need less processed foods. And we also need to generally and collectively eat lower on the food chain. So a Japanese study recently came out, and they concluded that for 1 kilogram of beef, as it's typically produced in the world today, there's enough a carbon dioxide impact to equal the amount that the average European car uses in driving 150 miles for 1 kilo of beef. So here again, the impact is enormous. Now, certain companies are making a lot of money off the current system. McDonald's and Coca-Cola and Monsanto, a number of others, right? And they're using some of that money to keep the status quo in place. They've got the best politicians money can buy doing their bidding all over the world. And yet, as individuals, we are not at the mercy of these systems. We have the ability to choose. What do we want to support with our dollars? What do we want to take into our bodies? And we also need to organize collectively and politically. Because as long as it's more expensive and more inconvenient to take care of your body and to do the right thing, it's going to be hard for a whole lot of people to do it. Snickers is infinitely more accessible and more economical to buy than spinach. So we've got work to do. We've got a farm bill in the United States that's set once again to give hundreds of billions of dollars in subsidies to what ultimately ends up subsidizing factory farms and high fructose corn syrup and the commodities market, instead of subsidizing and supporting broccoli farmers and community-based agriculture and local farmers trying to do a good thing, bringing good food to real people. So we've got work to do to change the systems, and we've got work to do as individuals to sometimes have to go upstream. But when you swim upstream in this system, you don't just do so for yourself. You do so for all of us. Norman Cousins said, "Nothing is more powerful than an individual acting out of his or her own conscience, thus helping to bring the collective conscience to life." So what we do, we don't just do for ourselves, we do it for all life on this planet. Now, one company, Monsanto, is probably not about to win any awards for most popular company in the world anytime soon. Recent protests saw about 2 million people turn out for marches against Monsanto in 436 cities around the world. I want to tell you one of the things about Monsanto that really disturbs me is that they've been able to lie and for the most part get away with it about some very important things. See, this is a chemical and pesticide company. And they came up with this notion of genetically engineering seeds. And they told the world, and a whole lot of people have fallen for it, that their seeds were going to lead to higher production, higher yields, less need for water, higher nutritional value, and help to feed humanity. None of that has borne fruit with any of the products that they have brought to commercial marketplace. What we have gotten is two things. We've gotten crops that have Bt in every cell of the plant. Now, Bt is a toxin that's relatively harmless to humans. It's been used in organic agriculture for a long time. But now it's not just being sprayed judiciously on the field when necessary. It's in every cell of the plant. It's not something you can wash off. So we're consuming now massive amounts of this toxin. It's true, farmers don't have to put insecticides on the field anymore. The crop is registered as an insecticide. Now, we've got another trait, which is the ability to withstand Roundup. We've got Roundup-ready crops. So Roundup is a chemical, glyphosate, that can be poured over a field, and it'll kill the plants, except these ones that withstand it, right? Well, that sounds good from a weed-eating perspective, but it's kind of problematic when you consider that we are now pouring massive amounts of Roundup on our farms. Totally unprecedented amounts. It's getting into our water. It's in the bodies of every human being pretty much in North America today. It is transferring over it's found in the fetuses in the mother's womb. Now, we don't know what the impact of all this Roundup and all this Bt toxin really is. There have been no long-term studies conducted on humans. What long-term studies have been conducted on rats are highly controversial. Depending on who you ask, they're incredibly terrifying or they absolutely show nothing whatsoever. But the reality is that we are human guinea pigs, and no one's really monitoring the experiment. But what we do know is that since GMOs came into widespread use, we're seeing some alarming trends in our health systems, and we're seeing rates of food allergies and allergy to wheat and many other things rising very, very fast. There's been a threefold increase in food allergy rates in the last 20 years in the United States, which corresponds rather precisely with the rate of the spread of GMO crops in this country. Coincidence? Maybe. Directly linked? Maybe. What I would like to see is for people to have the right to choose. And in the United States right now, we do not have labeling, and we do not have the right to choose. 93% of the American public supports labeling of GMO crops, but we don't have it. Why? Because of the political influence of a few big companies. But I believe that we, the people, can determine our destiny. And if our government doesn't lead, then we have to take leadership. And we are seeing a powerful, potent food revolution building across the United States and all over the world. It's taken shape in many forms, and I want to give you a few examples. In the last 10 years, we've seen organic food increase sales by tenfold. We've watched farmers' markets triple in the last decade. We've watched spreads of CSAs, that's community-supported agriculture, growing rapidly. We are seeing more and more and more people taking an interest in where their food comes from. We have initiatives in 26 states in the US organizing for labeling of genetically engineered foods. We have 64 countries around the world that call for labeling of genetically engineered foods as part of the law in those countries. We are seeing more and more people that are sick of being sick, that are tired of being lied to, and that are wanting to stand up for their health and for the health of their planet. It's an exciting time to be alive. It's a potent time to be alive. It's a time when what we do really matters. So I want to thank you for being a part of the food revolution in all the ways that you are. Every time you choose food that is nourishing for your body, every time you feed loved ones with food that comes from the heart, you're taking a stand for something beautiful. Food is very social. The act of breaking bread together down through history has been an act of communion and connection between peoples. So let's bring joy and beauty and aliveness to our relationship with food. Let us make it a connection with the living earth. Let us make it a stand for what we believe in. Let us link the personal and the global. And let's take a stand for the healthy food that we and all children deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. Bravo for launching a revolution that saves lives instead of taking them. We bless you for it. Beautiful.